Namaste and welcome to a Krishna story. When Krishna appeared on this planet 5,000 years ago, in the first part of his pastimes as a little boy, growing up in Vrindavan, Krishna killed many demons. These were very powerful, mystical demons, very powerful people who were friends with Kamsa, now this part in time, Kamsa was one of the most powerful kings on this planet. And so his friends would, on his behalf, perform many demoniac activities. And so Krishna personally killed those demons. And he didn't use any weapons. If you go through all the pastimes in Vrindavan, Krishna didn't have weapons. He didn't have swords. He didn't have bows. He didn't have armory on. He was just a little boy. And he was killing all these demons. But when he left Vrindavan and he went to Mathura, then things changed. Krishna had killed many of the prominent individual demons, but now it was time to really deal with these huge armies that a lot of kings had. And in order for that to happen, and in order for Krishna to really have fun and display these activities, when he was in Mathura and this huge army attacked, Krishna called down his chariot driver, and all his armory, and for Balaram as well. So the two brothers now had all their army. They had clubs, they had bows and arrows, they had swords, they had all the armory that they wore on their bodies, and they were ready for battle with millions of soldiers. Not that Krishna needs all of that, but just to have fun. So when Krishna left Mathura, he then went and moved to Dwarka city. Now, the story that I want to tell you today actually took part in Dwarka city. It's chapter 59 in the Krishna stories. And it's not a battle. I'm not going to tell you a story about a battle, even though there was a lead up to it. It's going to be a story where Krishna is teasing his wife, Rukmini. But to give a little background for Queen Rukmini, she was actually Krishna's first wife in Dwarka city. Krishna had 16,108 wives, each one with a palace in Dwarka city. But Rukmini was his first wife. So when Krishna arrived in Dwarka city, soon after his arrival there, a Brahmin came to his palace at night time with a very secret message from Rukmini. It was actually a letter, a secret letter from Rukmini. Now, Rukmini was a princess who lived in a kingdom nearby, and when she was quite young, there would be many visitors came to the court of her father, King Rukmi, and they would come and they would bring stories of Krishna, telling stories about Krishna. And especially when she had visitors such as Narada Muni, who would visit her father's court and speaking about Krishna. And Rukmini completely fell in love with Krishna just hearing about him. And I think this is actually wonderful to consider, because just hearing Shravanam, just hearing about Krishna, a person can fall in love with him. And that's why these Krishna stories are so wonderful, because we can hear about Krishna, hear about his activities, and just our hearts can melt. And we can gradually leave behind all the attachments that we have in this world and become attached to Krishna just by hearing about him from these Krishna stories. So we can never ever thank Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada enough for bringing these stories to us. So Rukmini sent this message to Krishna, telling Krishna that her family were arranging her marriage, and she only wanted Krishna as her husband. and would he please come and rescue her? And she went beyond that. She said, please come and kidnap me. So Krishna immediately arranged for his chariot driver to take him to the city where Princess Rukmini's marriage ceremony was about to start the process. And it's kind of a step-by-step process where all the princes from all the different kingdoms had come there to be chosen by her, because her beauty was beyond any beautiful woman on this planet. And all the princes, who were very hot-blooded creatures, had heard about the beauty of Rukmini, and they definitely wanted to have her as their wife. So all these princes had come, and these are very powerful princes. They'd all been in battles, they'd all survived battles, they'd all personally fought in battles, and they all came there, and they all brought their small armies with them, and they all came there hoping to be the one who's going to be chosen by her. And so the day arrived for Rukmini to come and choose one of these assembled princes. But before she was going to choose them, there was one last thing that she had to do, and she was to visit the family temple, make an offering, and then as she came out of the family temple, surrounded only by her maidservants, then she would proceed to the courts where all the princes were going to be there, where she could choose one. And now Rukmini, because she's a princess, she's a kshatriya. She's a female kshatriya. Even though she doesn't personally fight in battles, she understands how to plan these things out, how to plan a kidnapping. And so she had hinted to Krishna, more than hinted, she has told Krishna, the best time for you to come and kidnap me would be when I've made my offering in the temple, because there is only my friends around me, my girlfriends around me, are not heavily guarded, and is just before I choose a husband. Please come at that time and kidnap me. So Rukmini that morning, she is dressed beautifully by all her maids and her friends, and she goes into the temple and makes an offering, and they're all assisting her with making the offering. And she walks out of the temple, and it is now that she is hoping and expecting Krishna to come and kidnap her. And Rukmini was the most wonderful example of shyness and chastity. And as she walked out of that temple, she just kept her eyes looking at the ground, because she did not want to even look at the faces of all the princes. But all the princes, this was the first time they were seeing Rukmini. And when she walked out of that temple, they could not believe her beauty. Now, some of these princes were sitting on their horses, some were sitting on elephants, some were standing in their chariots. And as I explained, these are battle-hardened princes. But when they saw the beauty of Rukmini, they fell off their horses, they fell off the elephants, they fell out of the chariots. And this is actually, for a kshatriya to be unseated is the greatest shame to him. For somebody to be able to knock a kshatriya off his horse means you've defeated him. So all these princes, who are undefeatable in battle, were defeated by her beauty. And they were stunned. They were stunned how this could happen to them as they're lying on the ground, trying to stand up. And Rukmini is taking no notice of this. It's not like she became proud. Oh, look what I have done. Look at the effect that my beauty has on all these men. She was not proud of that. She was not interested in that. She was simply thinking, when is my Krishna coming to kidnap me? When is he coming? All she was thinking about was Krishna. And at that point, one of the rings on her fingers started slipping, and she lifted up her hand. And as she lifted up, her eyes lifted up, and she gazed through the crowd of all these princes, and there was Krishna. He had arrived. And he came through on his chariot, through the ranks of princes and their commanders, and he drove up to her in his chariot, and with one hand holding the reins of the horse and the other hand he picked her up so gallantly, and he placed her on his chariot. And then he drove, but he did not drive off fast. I love this part. He drove and he circled all the princes and their armies slowly. He slowly circled them as he held on to Rukmini, Princess Rukmini, and all the princes were dumbfounded, absolutely dumbfounded at the audacity of this boy from Vrindavan, this cowherd boy who had come there, and in front of all of them, not in front of one prince, in front of thousands of princes, he had kidnapped her, and then Krishna drove off. Of course, we know the rest of the story. He actually engaged with Balaram and his commander. He actually engaged in battles with all those princes and their armies and defeated all of them. So it's a wonderful story. I mean, and I remember Bhaktivedanta was explaining that because Rukmini was a Kshatriya princess, when Krishna was fighting the armies, she personally held onto the reins of the horses and drove the chariot for Krishna while he fought the armies. So it's a beautiful story. So Krishna took Rukmini to Dwarka city, and they had a beautiful marriage ceremony, and all the residents of Dwarka came out. They were so happy. They were so happy, and they were just amazed at how beautiful Rukmini was. And they felt she was a perfect wife for Krishna. So Krishna lived in the palaces with all his... So all the stories are just wonderful when Krishna married his wives. So Krishna is living there in Dwarka with 16,108 wives, 16,108 palaces. But let us go and look in the palace, Rukmini's palace. One day Krishna is sitting there in the palace, and he's sitting on a couch, and Bhaktivedanta describes in the Krishna book that the couch is covered in this white cloth, and it is so white and soft, it's like milk, and it is covered in all these cushions. And Krishna is sitting there, and Rukmini, even though she has her friends, her girlfriends and maidservants who are all doing things to serve Krishna, she personally picks up this fan, and she's standing there and she's fanning Krishna. And Krishna is looking at her, and he's thinking, Rukmini is so beautiful. But Krishna's remembering something that had taken place not so long beforehand. One day, Narada Muni had come to visit the palace there, Rukmini and Krishna, and Narada Muni had brought a present for Rukmini, and it was a flower, a single flower, a Parijata flower. And Narada Muni had brought that flower from the heavenly planets, from Lord Indra's planet, where Lord Indra lives. And this Parijata flower only grows in Lord Indra's capital city in the heavenly planets. So Narada Muni had picked one of the flowers and brought it there as a present for Rukmini. Now, one of Krishna's other wives, Satyabhama, she had seen this flower that Rukmini had, and Satyabhama knew that this flower was only in Lord Indra's capital city, And this was the most fragrant flower that you can imagine. And Satyabhama is thinking, that's not fair. I want those flowers too. So Satyabhama went to Krishna, her husband, and complained, I want those flowers too. And Krishna, who was the most wonderful husband, he said, oh, my dear Satyabhama, please don't get upset. I will bring you not just one flower, I will bring you an entire tree, an entire Parijati tree. And Satyabhama was thinking, oh, that's pretty cool. So Krishna actually took Satyabhama with him. This whole escapade that took place, he took the opportunity and he actually took her to Lord Indra's residence, his capital city. And they rode on the backs of Garuda. So you've got Krishna and Satyabhama flying through space on Garuda. And they come there to Lord Indra's city, and Lord Indra comes out, of course, to welcome them and everything. And Krishna grabs a whole Parijati bush, pulls it out, and he puts it on Garuda's back. Now, Indra didn't like this because Indra was used to the idea that only his city had the Parijati bush. He didn't like that. Do you know that he actually fought Krishna? Of course, Krishna didn't harm Indra, but he defeated Indra, and Indra had to bow his head and accept defeat. And Krishna brought the bush back with Satyabhama to Dwarka, and it was planted in Satyabhama's courtyard. So she was growing this beautiful Parijati bush. Now this Parijati, the fragrance from the Parijati is so beautiful that it described that when Krishna brought the Parijati bush to Dwarka, that all the swans and the bees that were on the heavenly planets in the city there of Indra Loka, where Indra lived, the swans and the bees flew down to Dwarka city to reside there with this Parijati bush. So Krishna was remembering this pastime that had taken place, but he also was remembering that when he brought back a whole bush and planted it in Satyabhama's courtyard, Rukmini never got angry. She never got jealous. She was completely and utterly satisfied just serving Krishna. And Krishna was amazed at this, but he was also thinking, I would like to see Rukmini get angry. Because Rukmini didn't get angry. Even over something like that, she never got angry. And Krishna's thinking, I would love to see her face angry. He was thinking her face would be so beautiful when she's angry. I want to make her angry. So I am now going to make Rukmini angry. So that's the part of the story that I would like to read out to you. So what Krishna does, while Rukmini's fanning him, right, he starts speaking to her, and he starts basically presenting to Rukmini why she can divorce him. She's presenting the idea that she can divorce him, that's okay, and there are many reasons why he is not suitable as a husband for her. And so he presents these reasons to Rukmini. Now, I'm going to read you out some of these reasons. It's a very long story, so I've gathered this down and picked out some of the reasons why she should divorce him. Then we're going to see what unfolds after that, because it's actually very beautiful what unfolds from that. So let me begin to read to you these propositions, this statement that Krishna makes to Rukmini. Okay. And he begins with, my dear princess, it's very surprising. Many great personalities in the royal order wanted to marry you. Although not all of them were kings, all possessed the opulence and riches of the kingly order. They were well behaved, learned, famous amongst other kings, handsome, and were very powerful in strength. They were not unfit in any way, and over and above that, your father and your brother had no objection to such marriages. On the contrary, they gave their word of honour that you would be married with Shishupala. So they'd picked out a particular king for her, Shishupala. Shishupala was a great king and was so mad after your beauty that if he had have married you, I think he would have always remained with you, just like your faithful servant. In comparison to Shishupala with his personal qualities, I am nothing. I'm surprised that you rejected the marriage with Shishupala and accepted me, who am inferior in comparison to Shishupala. I think myself completely unfit to be your husband because you are so beautiful, sober, grave, and exalted. Now he's going to present another reason. I'm inferior to all these princes. You may know that I was so afraid of Jarasandha that I could not dare to live in the land in Mathura, and thus I have constructed this house within the sea. I'm not very heroic. I'm a coward. I'm afraid. Another fault is that although I'm on the throne, I have no claim. I got this kingdom by killing my maternal uncle, Kamsa. People expected that I would follow in the footsteps of my foster father, Nanda Maharaj, and the people of the village of Vrindavan, but all of a sudden I left them. I wanted to become a famous prince. Besides this, I'm not very polished in social etiquette. A person should be satisfied with one wife, but you see, I've married many times and I have more than 16,000 wives. Because I was trained in a village in my childhood, I'm not well acquainted with the etiquette of urban life. I do not know the way to please a wife with nice words and behaviour. And from practical experience, it's found that any woman who becomes attracted to me is ultimately left to cry for the rest of her life. My dear beautiful princess, you may also know that I'm penniless. Just after my birth, I was carried penniless to the house of Nanda Maharaj, and I was raised just like a cowherd boy. Although my foster father possessed many hundreds of thousands of cows, I was not proprietor of even one of them. I was simply entrusted to take care of them. So here is the finale to Krishna's statement to Rukmini, when he says to her, "But there is no harm. It's better late than never. You are at liberty to select a suitable husband who is actually an equal to you in opulence, family tradition, wealth, beauty, education, in all respects. Therefore, I advise you, you can now select one of the great Kshatriya princes and accept him as your life's companion. And you can reject me. My beautiful princess, you know that members of the princely order, including Shishupala, Salva, Jarasandha, and even your brother Rukmini, are my enemies. They do not like me at all. All these princes were puffed up with their worldly possessions. In order to teach them some lessons, I agreed to kidnap you, according to your desire. Otherwise, I actually have no love for you, although you loved me even before the marriage." Whoa, that was the finale to his statement. After submitting these statements, Krishna suddenly stopped. Because you see, the whole time, Rukmini, she had stopped fanning Krishna, and she was just standing there, stock still. And she was not getting angry, she was not interrupting him, she was just standing there, frozen. Without replying a word to Krishna's statement, Rukmini simply cried in great anxiety, as if being drowned in an ocean of grief. She silently scratched the ground with the nails of her toes. Tears mixed with the black eye ointment ran down her face. Choked up on account of great anxiety, unable to speak even a single word, she kept her head downward and remained standing still. Due to extremely painful fearfulness and lamentation, she lost all her reasoning powers and became so weak that immediately her body lost so much weight that the bangles on her wrists became slackened. The fan she was holding fell from her hand and she lost consciousness. As she fell down, she fell straight down, just like a banana tree cut down by a whirlwind. And when Krishna saw this happening, Krishna immediately stood up from the couch. Now Krishna and Rukmini, their relationship is like Lakshmi Narayan, and Lord Narayan has 4 arms, and Krishna immediately manifested 4 arms, and with 2 arms he caught her as she was falling down. He caught her in his arms, and with his 2 other arms, he immediately began stroking her hair and patting her face. And Krishna began speaking to her because she's unconscious at this point. "My dear Rukmini, please don't be unkind to me. The words which have affected you so much are not factual. I wanted to irritate you just a little bit, and I was expecting you to make counter answers to my joking words. Oh, perfection of love, I never expected that your condition would be like this. I expected that you would put your blinking eyes upon me in retaliation, and in that way I would be able to see your beautiful face in that angry mood. My dear, beautiful wife, you know that we are householders. We're always busy in household affairs, and we long for the time that we can enjoy joking words between each other." In this way, Krishna began to pacify Rukmini, and gradually she opened her eyes and looked upon him with a smile. Now the next part is that Rukmini now begins to reply to all the statements that Krishna made. And in her humility and in her love for Krishna, she was actually agreeing with all of Krishna's statements. So this is a beautiful reply. And she says, "My dear lotus-eyed Lord, your statement that we are not a fit combination is completely right. It's not possible for me to come to an equal level with you because you are the reservoir of all qualities. How can I be a fit match for you? My dear husband, also you have rightly said that being afraid of the kings, you've taken shelter in the water. But who are these worldly kings? I think the worldly kings are the senses. They are most formidable and they control everyone. You are never under the control of the senses. Rather, you are Hrishikesh, the controller of the senses. My lord, you have stated that you are penniless and that only beggars praise your glories, and that's also completely correct. But who are these beggars? Those beggars are all exalted devotees, liberated personalities. They are all great souls and devotees who have no other business than to glorify you. My dear husband, do not think that out of my inexperience I accepted you as my husband. Actually, I followed all these great souls. I followed the path of these great souls and decided to surrender my life unto your lotus feet. My dear, all-powerful son of Vasudeva, your statement that you have taken shelter within the water of the ocean, being afraid of the great princess, is quite suitable. But my experience with you contradicts this. I have actually seen that you kidnapped me forcibly in the presence of all these princes. At the time of my marriage ceremony, simply by pulling the string of your bow, You very easily drove the others away and kindly gave me shelter at your lotus feet. I still remember vividly that you kidnapped me in the same way as a lion forcibly takes his share of hunted booty, driving away all other small animals within the twinkling of an eye. My dear Lord, you have advised me to select one of the princes such as Shishupala or Jarasandha. But what is their position in this world? A man within this material world is just a dead body. In fact, superficially, the living entity is covered by this body, which is nothing but a bag of skin, decorated with beards and mustaches and hairs on the body and nails on the fingers and hairs on the head. Within this decorated bag there are bunches of muscles, bundles of bones and pools of blood, always mixed with stool, urine, mucus, bile and polluted air, and enjoyed by different kinds of insects and germs. A foolish woman accepts such a dead body as her husband. This is only possible because such a woman has never tasted the ever blissful flavour of your lotus feet. So that was Rukmini's reply to him. So then Krishna says to her, after hearing Rukmini's statement, Krishna says, "My dear princess, I was expecting such an explanation from you, and for this purpose only I spoke all those joking words. My dearmost wife, I am greatly pleased to understand how much love you have for me. Please take it for granted that I am always at your service. I have purposely agitated you by speaking many words which were not applicable to your character, and I'm surprised to see that not a pinch of your devotion to me has been deviated from its fixed position. My dear best of the queens, it is clearly understood by me that you have no material ambition. Your only purpose is to serve me. Persons who are too addicted to material happiness cannot render such service. Women whose hearts are polluted and full of material desires devise various means of sense gratification while outwardly showing themselves to be great devotees. My dear honoured wife, although I have thousands of wives, I do not think that any one of them can love me more than you. My dear wife, you have purchased me for all time. As far as I am concerned, it is not within my power to repay you for your unalloyed devotion to me. Jai Shri Krishna, all glories to Krishna and his wonderful pastimes. Namaste.